Welcome back to HR Gamechangers. I'm Dave. And today I'm joined by Luisa, a real expert in all things HR. We've been digging into this article, reflecting on 2024, Key HR Trends and Transformative Insights for the Year Ahead by Brett Beauchamp-Russell. And we're going to break down some of the most important points. What do you think? Ready to dive in?
Sounds good to me. It's great to be here.
So let's talk about this idea, this shift from employee engagement to employee experience. It's a hot topic. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because it seems like we're realizing that just, checking in with employees through surveys and stuff, it's not really enough.
Right, it's not the whole picture.
Exactly. It's got to be more about the whole journey, the whole experience they have with the company.
So we're going beyond just perks and free lunches and stuff.
For sure. It's about creating a place where people feel valued, where they feel supported, and where their work has a real purpose.
It's about the whole package.
Exactly. Think about things like fair pay, opportunities to grow and learn, a healthy balance between work and life, and just feeling like you belong, like you're part of something.
It makes sense. Recognizing that employees are people with needs and wants and a life outside of work.
Absolutely. And the article brings up some interesting points about how to actually make the employee experience better. One thing it talks about is getting regular feedback.
Feedback from employees.
Exactly, giving them different ways to share their thoughts and concerns.
Okay, like how?
Well, you could do regular surveys, have one-on-one meetings with managers, or even like town hall meetings where people can speak openly. But it's not just about getting the feedback.
It's about doing something with it.
Exactly. You have to show employees that their feedback matters, that you're actually listening and making changes based on what they say.
So things like flexible work schedules or professional development opportunities.
Exactly. When employees see that their feedback leads to real changes, it makes them feel valued, and that keeps them engaged.
So it's a win-win.
Definitely.
Now, what about recognition and celebration? How does that fit into the employee experience?
Oh, that's huge. Recognition is so powerful.
In what way?
Well, think about it. When you celebrate someone's achievements, even small ones, it boosts morale. It makes people feel appreciated.
It makes them feel seen.
Exactly.
So, shifting gears a bit, the article also talks about this problem of workplace incivility. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a big deal, and it seems to be getting worse. Even small acts of disrespect or rudeness can have a ripple effect. It impacts teamwork, productivity, morale.
Like a poison, right? Slowly eroding the workplace.
That's a great way to put it. When people are constantly dealing with incivility, they're less likely to collaborate, they get stressed out, and their performance suffers.
So what can companies do about it?
Well, it all starts with building a culture of respect.
How do you do that?
Leadership has to set the tone.
They have to walk the walk.
Exactly. They need to be respectful in all their interactions and make it clear that incivility won't be tolerated.
So beyond that, what are some concrete steps companies can take?
Training is really important.
Training on what?
On things like respectful communication.
Okay.
And conflict resolution.
So giving people the tools to handle difficult conversations.
Exactly. Teach them how to address conflict in a healthy way.
And I imagine it's also important to have clear ways for people to report incivility.
Absolutely. People need to feel safe speaking up without fear of retaliation.
So they know that their concerns will be taken seriously.
Exactly. And when those reports are made, there needs to be a clear process for investigating them and addressing them fairly.
Okay, let's move on to something a little different. Technology. Specifically, the role of AI in HR. What's your take on that?
AI is definitely changing the game in HR.
In what way?
It's giving us tools to streamline processes and get really valuable insights from data.
So it's a good thing.
It can be. But we have to be careful. We can't rely on AI too much.
Why not? What's the risk?
The risk is that we dehumanize the employee experience.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if we automate everything,
Okay.
employees might start to feel like just cogs in a machine.
Instead of valued individuals.
Exactly. We have to remember that human connection is still important, especially when it comes to sensitive issues.
So how do we find that balance? How do we use AI effectively without losing that human touch?
We have to be smart about it.
Okay, what do you mean?
AI is great for things like screening resumes
Yeah.
or analyzing data.
Those are tasks that can be automated.
Exactly. But when it comes to things like performance reviews or addressing employee concerns or offering support and guidance,
Yeah.
The human element needs to be front and center.
It's about using AI to complement human interaction, not replace it.
Precisely. And you know what's interesting?
What that?
AI can actually be used to enhance the human touch.
How so?
Well, for example, it can be used to personalize training programs.
Based on an employee's individual needs.
Exactly.
So you're using technology
Yeah,
to actually make things more human-centered.
that's the idea.
Now let's talk about something that always seems to impact businesses. Politics. The article mentions how the political climate in 2024 really shaped HR policies. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, politics definitely had an impact, especially things like major elections and changes in legislation.
So how did that affect HR specifically?
Well, it really influenced things like workforce development and inclusion strategies.
Companies had to adapt to stay compliant.
Exactly. And, some of these changes actually created opportunities for growth.
So it wasn't all bad.
Not at all.
But I imagine it was challenging for HR professionals to keep up with all the changes and make sure their companies were staying on the right side of the law.
It was definitely a lot to navigate.
So what advice would you give to HR professionals who are trying to stay ahead of the curve when it comes to these political and legal shifts?
The most important thing is to stay informed.
How do you do that?
There are some great resources out there, like the SHRM HR Policy Briefing newsletter.
Oh yeah, SHRM is a great resource.
Absolutely. And there are a ton of HR-focused webinars that can keep you up to date on the latest legal developments.
So education is key.
Yeah, and it's also a good idea to connect with legal experts.
People who can provide specialized guidance.
Exactly.
So you're not going it alone.
Right.
Speaking of legal stuff, let's talk about regulatory changes. Those always seem to have a big impact on HR.
They do. In 2024, we saw court rulings and regulatory updates affecting everything from workplace safety to diversity initiatives.
It was a busy year.
It was, and it's easy to see these changes as just burdens.
I could see that.
But I think it's important to reframe them
How so?
as opportunities.
Opportunities.
Yeah, opportunities to improve HR policies
I like that.
and align them more closely with your organization's values.
So you're taking something that could be seen as negative and turning it into a positive.
Exactly.
But of course, there are risks to not complying with these regulations.
Absolutely.
What are some of those risks?
Oh, you could face hefty penalties. You could damage your reputation.
Yeah.
And you could lose the trust of your employees.
So it's important to take compliance seriously.
Very seriously.
So how can HR professionals approach compliance proactively? How can they mitigate those risks?
Collaboration is key
Collaboration with who?
with legal advisors.
To make sure you understand the regulations.
Exactly. And it's helpful to establish a compliance team.
A team dedicated to making sure the company is following the rules.
That's the idea. This team can adapt policies as needed and ensure that everything meets legal standards.
It's about having a system in place.
Right. Proactive compliance is about more than just avoiding penalties.
It's about what?
It's about showing that you're committed to responsible and ethical workplace practices.
Which ultimately benefits everyone.
Exactly.
Now let's shift our focus to the labor market. 2024 was an interesting year. It seemed like a bit of a mixed bag.
It was.
What were some of the key trends you observed?
Well, on the one hand, unemployment rates stabilized. It is. But on the other hand, many organizations were still struggling to fill specialized roles,
In what areas?
especially in high-demand sectors like technology, healthcare, and engineering.
So the demand for skilled workers remained high.
Very high. And that means companies need to be creative with their talent acquisition strategies.
Traditional recruiting methods might not cut it anymore.
Exactly.
So what are some of the trends shaping talent acquisition today?
One big trend is a shift in employee priorities.
How so?
Culture and development opportunities,
Okay.
those are becoming more important than ever.
More important than traditional perks and benefits.
That's right.
So people are looking for more than just a paycheck.
Exactly. They want to work for companies that align with their values and companies that offer opportunities for growth.
They want a fulfilling career.
Exactly.
So how can companies adapt to this new reality?
They need to refine their employer branding.
What does that mean?
It means showcasing what makes their organization unique, highlighting things like clear career paths, mentorship programs, and opportunities to do meaningful work.
It's about telling a compelling story.
Exactly. A story that resonates with potential employees.
And it's not just about attracting new talent. It's also about keeping the talent you have.
Absolutely.
How do you do that?
You need to understand what your employees want, what motivates them, What makes them want to stay?
And how do you get that information?
Regular employee surveys are a great tool.
So you're constantly checking in.
Exactly, getting feedback and using it to shape your talent acquisition and retention strategies.
It's about staying ahead of the curve.
That's the key.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit and talk about I&D, inclusion and diversity.
It's a big topic these days.
It is, and it's evolved a lot.
In what way?
Well, it's gone from being about compliance
Checking boxes, right?
to being a strategic imperative.
So companies are realizing that I&D is actually good for business.
Exactly. Diverse teams are more innovative, they make better decisions, and they perform better.
That makes sense. But we hear a lot of companies talking about I&D without any real action behind it.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of lip service.
So how do we make sure that I&D efforts are actually impactful?
Accountability is key. You need to set specific goals and track your progress.
So it's not enough to just say you care about diversity.
Right. You have to actually do something about it.
What kind of goals are we talking about?
Things like increasing the representation of women in leadership roles or hiring more people from underrepresented groups.
And you need to measure your progress toward those goals.
Exactly. And be transparent about the results.
Even if you're not where you want to be yet.
Exactly. Transparency is so important for building trust.
With employees
Yeah,
and with the public.
absolutely.
The article also talked about a shift in leadership. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. We're moving away from that traditional top-down leadership style.
The command and control model.
Right. And we're seeing more emphasis on collaboration.
So leaders are becoming more like facilitators.
In a way, yeah, it's about bringing people together and valuing different perspectives.
So diversity isn't just about the workforce. It's about leadership, too.
Absolutely. A diverse leadership team is better equipped to make decisions in today's complex business world.
It also sends a strong message to employees.
That the company values inclusivity at all levels.
So how do we develop this new breed of leaders?
Well, we need to invest in leadership development programs.
Programs that focus on diversity.
Exactly. And we need to be intentional about succession planning.
Making sure that we're grooming a diverse group of future leaders.
Right.
Okay, let's move on to another big topic. Hybrid and remote work. It's become the norm for a lot of companies.
It has. And it's created some new challenges for HR.
Like what?
Well, one challenge is finding that balance between flexibility and structure.
Employees want flexibility, but they also need some guidelines.
Exactly. They need to know what's expected of them.
So how do we strike that balance?
HR needs to set clear expectations.
For things like work hours and communication protocols.
Right. And it's also important to have the right tools in place.
Tools that facilitate collaboration and communication.
Exactly.
And we can't forget about the human element.
Absolutely. We need to be mindful of the potential for isolation and burnout.
Especially with remote workers.
It's important to provide access to mental health resources and encourage people to take breaks.
To prioritize their well-being.
Exactly.
The article also mentioned something interesting, the connection between HR and public relations.
Yeah, that's becoming increasingly important.
In what way?
Well, HR decisions can have a big impact on a company's reputation.
If you handle things poorly, it can become a PR nightmare.
They can.
So how can HR and PR work together more effectively?
Communication is key. They need to develop joint strategies for handling major initiatives.
Whether it's announcing layoffs or promoting diversity initiatives.
Right. They need to make sure that their messaging is aligned and that it's consistent across all channels.
And they need to be transparent.
Absolutely. Transparency builds trust.
With employees and with the public.
Exactly.
So, Luisa, we've covered a lot of ground today. Employee experience, workplace dynamics, the role of technology, and the impact of politics and regulations.
It's been a great conversation.
It has. And I think one key theme has really emerged. HR needs to be agile, strategic, and people-centric.
Absolutely.
It's clear that HR isn't just about administrative tasks anymore. It's about shaping the entire employee experience, fostering a positive and inclusive culture, and playing a vital role in driving the success of the organization.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the key HR trends of 2024, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
What can you do right now to create a more engaged, productive, and fulfilling work environment for yourself and your teams?
That's a great question to ponder. Luisa, it's been a pleasure having you on the show today.
The pleasure was all mine.
And to all of our HR game changers out there, thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.